Great taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.
Welcome to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. We are at Green Building Supply, our host every first Tuesday of the month for our live show. Very happy that you've all joined us, and I know you want to applaud, so that's great. Yeah, excellent. Good work. You can come back. That's perfect. And those of you who got here earlier, what about that? What happened? Did it work? It worked, right? Okay, so we had a little amuse-bouche before we got started of asparagus soup, and we do have some left, so those of you who came a little bit later will be able to have that. And we'll talk a little bit about how it was made. Was it any good or not? Oh, I take back what I said. You don't have to come next month. Anyway, Michael Havelka is my guest. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I'm not sure any other guest has ever gotten an applause at the beginning.
Really? Oh, I'm honored.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
And Michael is our asparagus expert. He's not going to agree with that, but he is my asparagus expert. And he is a grower for many years of asparagus. And so we hope he's going to shed a little light on asparagus, how to grow it, how to cultivate it, how to pick it, when to pick it, what kind of season, how long the season is. And then in the second half, we're going to cook asparagus. We're going to, well, as already occurred, made asparagus soup already, which I'll tell you about. Very simple and easy. Those of you who are here saw a little bit about it, about how it's done. And we're going to roast some asparagus that we're just going to have just really plain, just roasted asparagus with maybe some butter. Oh, you better remind me. And then we're going to have asparagus risotto also. So that'll be all right. It'll be okay. So, and while we're talking, or while I'm talking, I guess, let me remind you that our next show, because it's always the first Tuesday of every month here at Green Building Supply, our live show is June the 7th. And that's going to be a really great show because Will Love is going to be there along with his friends. And we're going to be having some really excellent, I think maybe Shiraj is going to make pizza possibly. We'll see, and maybe some cheesecake, and we got to see what happens. But anyway, it's going to be raw, so it's going to be really different and amazingly tasty. And in the first half of that show, Rosie Witherspoon will be here along with my former co-host Kathy Dubois, who will be in town, and we're going to be showing you some really wonderful kitchen tools that you can use that are going to make your life so much easier. I was at the Housewares show in March, and I was looking for just a few little things that I knew would be so welcome in most everyone's kitchen. And I found them, and I'm really excited. I'm going to be really excited to show them to you because they're all really inexpensive, and they're just really great little tools to make your life easier. So, on with asparagus. Spring is asparagus in the Midwest. Unfortunately, we miss out on some other things. It's usually too wet for peas. It seems like early peas. No,
it's not always. If you have them on well-drained soil, they'll do good.
How do you have well-drained soil when it just keeps pouring?
Well, you have to raise it above the surrounding area so that it naturally just drains down. The moisture moves away from it. Mainly, well-drained is its roots are not wet in water all the time, or even after heavy rain, you want them that to only last, no more than an hour. If you really want to get away from that,
So, all right, I'm missing that. I gotta get that together so I can have some well-drained soil because I don't have any well-drained soil. And the second thing I'm missing are baby fava beans. Can we do that here?
Well, I'm not that familiar with fava beans. I've seen them, but I don't think I've ever raised them. So, if I know you want a bunch of them, I could try growing some.
Just plant them, baby. We'll take care of it. We'll take care of them because that's fava in the spring are just amazing. I feel like one of the things that happens around here is that we get the West Coast dregs sometimes. You know, like the artichokes we get, they all have, I mean, talk about beards. I mean, they've been growing them for a long time. And the fava beans are just like gigantic. They've been, you know, in those pods for, you know, several years. Yeah. So it'd be really nice if we had some wonderful stuff like that, baby favas. And so if you can do it next year. But meantime, you're here because we're going to talk about asparagus, which is an amazing spring vegetable here. And the season kind of started, and then it got shut down a little bit.
Yeah, it's in its normal routine. You know, it gets cold, it warms up, and then it pops out, and then it gets cold like it did this last week, and then it stops, and then everybody goes nuts, and the price should go up of asparagus when it does come in, so that people are really in the mood for asparagus.
Yeah, I noticed actually with the commercial asparagus, it went up almost double this week, which made no sense to me because I didn't understand why it should be. It usually is very expensive at the beginning of the season, and then it gets a little bit better as the season goes on. And this season it started out really inexpensive. I mentioned that to you. And now it's doubled, so it's weird.
Yeah, well, it depends on what it's doing in the rest of the country. They kind of do a USDA listing of a pricing, and so, you know, it depends on if the major asparagus producers in one area have bad weather. They can't get in to get it out, and so one thing in a lot of those areas, they're growing the asparagus in a sandy, silty loam area, you know, river bottoms and things. And here in Iowa, it's black clay, silty loam clay, and so you can't get into it as easily as you can like some of those places. And so you need to, you know, have a mulch around your thing so you can get in there without sinking up to your knees in mud. And we were a little on the dry side, which was always kind of concerns me. And then I was glad to see it. We got about, probably 2 inches of rain over the last week and a half. So we're in good shape. And then now all we need is the warm sunshine, which we're starting to get today. And we're off to a good start, I think. I think it'll really kick in.
Music to my ears. How many people grow asparagus through here? Just let me see a show of hands. Oh, you have some. How many people would like to grow asparagus? Because, so perfect then. Okay, so you've got a good audience. So what's the first step?
Well, usually the first step, you could start with seeds, but asparagus takes about 3 years to really get going. So I would go with roots. You can buy them from any nursery. A lot of nurseries have them, or seed order places. And so you buy the roots that are about a year or two old, and that gives you a boost. And so you take those out and you plant them, put them in the ground. And of course, you would want to put them in, there's all kinds of opinions on, you can start by digging an 18-inch deep trench, fill it with a little bit of compost in the bottom, and then set them on top of that. So they're a foot, they're a foot from the top, and you slowly fill it as the roots start sprouting, and they start to shoot up asparagus. And that's good if you've got well-drained sandy soil. In Iowa, I'm a little reluctant with that technique, because if you haven't got your trench all the way full, and you get like 2 weeks of rain or a week of rain, then your trench is going to fill up with water, and your roots if they don't die, they will be in a bad shape. So I would want to fill, I tend towards a shallower planting and having them so that you end up, when the whole thing is finished, your roots are probably 8 inches above the ground, surrounding ground. And you usually want to plant them, about a foot to 16 inches apart, and in between rows, 4 to 5 feet. So they're pretty far apart. And so that way, it also makes it easier if you want to get, rototiller in there or mower or something to maintain them.
Okay, so before we get a little bit further into that, I want to just talk about 3 different colors. There's the green asparagus, there's the white asparagus, there's the purple asparagus. Usually I don't see much other than green around Iowa.
Yeah, we're simple folk here. There's purple. You can get varieties that are purple. And I'm getting more conservative. I just said it's supposed to be green. But anyway, you can do the white with blanching. And it's kind of a weird thing too. But where you mulch or you cover the stalks, so when they come up, those are white. And they're supposed to, sometimes that happens naturally with ours as the weeds kind of grow up around it. They kind of cover and keep it blanched naturally. So just sort of a natural blanching we have on our place.
Okay, so How many asparagus plants, or how much space do you have that's dedicated to asparagus? Because I want to establish your credibility.
Oh, I would be considered hardly on the map as far as asparagus goes. We probably have between an eighth and a quarter of an acre. It varies because because some of it is in various stages of getting too old, or we haven't developed it yet. It hasn't grown, and so yeah, it's enough. It keeps us busy. But I'm going to be retiring from my day job, and so. Like some of who I've inspired to do. And so anyway, we're going to, I'll have more time. So we're, next Saturday, we're planting another, probably 700 plants, roots. And so we're going to that'll be bumping it up a little bit more. And I'll be taking care of some of the patches that are, that have kind of, they're out in the far reaches, and the grass has gotten them around them, and they're not producing as well. But, let's see, one patch is aging. It's probably up around 20 years old, 22 years old. And so you can read on the various things. Some people say they'll only last about 10 years, and some say they'll last 15, and some people will say 25 or older. But it's kind of how well the drain site they're on. And because asparagus are prone to various types of fungus that get in there and really hit them hard when the roots get inundated with water when they're on a poorly drained site.
Okay, so we start by buying rootstock.
Yep.
That's the first thing. And are there different varieties that we should look for, or pretty much if you go to a good place, you do some research on the internet, whatever rootstock you get is gonna work for you? I mean, or is there something in Iowa that we really need to keep our eyes out for?
Well, I liked let's see, a Jersey Knight and a Jersey. What's the other one? It's something with. They're both similar varieties in the Jersey, and they're all male. And so the traditional asparagus is male and female. And obviously, if you're raising babies, you're too tired to grow asparagus. It basically puts its energy into raising seed instead of asparagus that you're going to eat. So they will produce quite a bit more edible asparagus than, but they're a little bit more expensive.
The males.
The males will do that, yeah. And so I recommend those. And the ones I get, I kind of select ones that are more resistant to various kinds of Phytophthora. It's a fungus that affects them.
Okay. And do we have to be concerned about deer, for example, that seem to eat everything around here?
They're not a major. Well, I can't say that because we happen to not have a whole lot of deer where we are, but we have rabbits, and they will nip them, and it's better to have them fenced off because things will get in there and break them off, and then rabbits will eat them to a certain extent, and then, like I say, I'm not as familiar with deer, but I'm sure they will go in there and browse them pretty heavily. Okay,
and what type of care is necessary on a regular basis so that everybody who said they were interested, let's see if they're interested after you talk about how much time it takes.
Well, it's when they're first coming up, and after you plant them, then you cultivate it and keep the weeds and grass away from them, and you can mulch them to keep it cool and keep the moisture there. Unless it gets too wet, then you might want to rake back the mulch. But grass is always a big issue. Keeping the grass, they will still produce if grass moves in around them, but not as much, because I've seen asparagus growing on the roadsides. I haven't done any studies of how much their yield is reduced, but I'm sure it's significant. But you will still get asparagus. And that happened to ours. We were building our homestead, and just north of town, and we planted our patch of asparagus, but we didn't have the manpower to keep up with it and keep the weeds out. And so the grass moved in, and I said, gee, how am I ever going to get this patch cleared out? I kind of wanted to do it a little more commercially. We weren't, and then so we left it. And then I was throwing the asparagus scraps to our chickens, and the chickens would not touch it. And I said, these chickens don't like asparagus. And then, light bulb goes off. I go, well, wait a minute. I can manipulate the chickens. And so we built a fence around our asparagus patch, and the chickens cleaned, probably within a couple weeks, cleaned the grass out of there. Killed every bit of the grass. And they didn't touch the asparagus. I mean, if they're real small, they would knock them, break them over. But you turn them in there a little later, and they just cleaned it out, and it was down to bare earth. And they kind of did a nice thing. They also fertilized it. And so I said, well, this is pretty good. We don't make that much off eggs, but the chickens supply us a service, And so they keep themselves, so we make a little bit off the eggs, but mostly off the asparagus. And so that's, and then right before harvest time, you'll want to take the chickens out of there so they're not pooping all over your asparagus. But
thank you. We were glad to hear that. So right. So that's a pretty simple way of maintaining it if you
don't mind having chickens.
Right. If you don't mind having chickens, and otherwise, you've got to keep the grass down yourself. So you're gonna have to get out there every few days or so and just kind of maintain things.
Yeah, you got to keep the weeds down. Like say you can just keep them hoed and keep bare earth, or you can do mulching. You could grow a Dutch clover base around there. Just seed it with Dutch clover, which doesn't grow up very high, and that'll help keep it. And that'll give you some of that natural blanching kind of look. And then the clover will use up some water, and you might have to water a little extra. But the clover will also supply it with some nitrogen. And so once you get your bed established, and then like the first year, you wouldn't want to. Generally speaking, you should keep your hands off. Don't pick any of the new little spears coming up. And then the second year, you might.
Hold on one second. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that, and that is that once you plant the stock, and you see these little guys, you have to leave it alone. You can't. I mean, it's kind of hard, but you can't touch it that first year for sure. And now I'm anxious to hear what Michael says about the second year.
Second year, you should have restraint. It'd be
I think a lot of restraint, actually.
Yeah, for years, probably won't even let you know it's out there if you get yours going. And so, you could pick some. Obviously, the more you take this year, the less you're going to have next year. You could go in there and do a little bit of picking. And then there's all these formulas. You could probably, so there's the first year that you plant, that's year one. The second year, to be the next spring, you might pick just a little bit. Maybe a week you could pick some. And then the following year I think it's the fourth year and you're full out. The third year you're like 3/4, you could do half. So those are just rough guidelines. It kind of depends on the health of your asparagus and how it's doing and stuff like that.
Yeah, so you really have to have restraint, and you really have to be playing for the long haul essentially when you're doing asparagus.
Yeah, but then you've got it, It's like, okay, you got this thing that's going to last you probably 20 years if you did the right stuff. And other than weeding, there's no planting. You just go out there and pick it. And you can, as Steve likes it, but we haven't, as you can do a fall picking too. If you don't pick in the spring, you just let it go, and then you can come in and mow it down with a mower, and then you can come in and do a fall about a month before frost, or maybe a little earlier, 6 weeks before frost. And you won't get as much, we found out, you don't get as much asparagus when you do that. But you do get that little nice bit of asparagus in the fall.
Yes, but unfortunately Michael doesn't do that anymore, which is quite disappointing to some people. But it's a great thing for a home gardener to understand, because it's really simple. You just take part of your patch and dedicate it for the spring. And then when everybody is bemoaning the fact that they don't have any asparagus anymore, and all of a sudden they see you either eating asparagus in the fall or talking about it, then you'll be like a big star, because everybody will be like, where did you get that? How did you get that? Because asparagus is generally thought of as a spring plant, but it was ISU that gave you that idea, right?
I think, yeah, it's been around. Yeah, they actually had a program and they thought it worked pretty good. Sometimes the fall weather, if you can water it, our patch was too big to water. If you could water it and pamper it, it'd be a better deal. What would happen is we'd hit a dry spell and it wouldn't produce anything, and then next thing you know, winter's upon us. And so we ended up not doing it. It worked, and then I think we had trouble with grasshoppers one year because you have more insect population that time of year and stuff. I mean, it would be especially, I would think, if you're a home gardener to do some of that.
It'd be great, I think, at that point. Now, what about harvesting? What are you looking for?
Asparagus, usually.
Oh, excellent, Michael. And one thing about that, which I think is important, because when you're looking for asparagus, you really have to understand that asparagus is a tricky little plant. You could go out there on a Monday and not see any, and you might think, oh, well, I'll come back Thursday, and it could be huge by then.
Yeah, too late. Usually we pick every day. And sometimes when the weather gets really hot, and I think we're working more with mulching now to kind of reduce that variability. If it gets really hot, these things can grow up to 10 inches a day. And so, on your own, especially if it's your own home little patch, it's not quite as big a deal because you can go out there twice a day, and you can go out in the morning and it's just poking up, and then by the afternoon it's almost, and you want to get it before it comes up in a tight little head, and generally you want to get it before it starts to open up. That it'll still be good even when it opens up. I don't notice a huge difference in flavor, but if you're marketing it at all, you want to have it tight to look good in a tight little bundle up top, and then it'll eventually open up and form like a fern, that'll spread out, and it's actually quite a pretty plant. And you could actually use it as a ornamental behind, as a backdrop to some of your other stuff, and then you have an edible ornamental in there that you can eat in the spring, and then it looks pretty the rest of the year. But anyway, so you're looking for, when it's hot, some people come out twice a day and pick, but generally we have to do it every day, or you come in the next day and some of the stuff's too old. And of course at our house we eat a lot of culls, but they're still at that stage, they're so fresh, even the culls taste really good, so we gobble those up. So Steve gets the really good stuff and we get some of the second rate stuff.
Okay, so now when you're harvesting it, how are you doing that? Are you breaking it? Are you cutting it? What are you doing?
We cut it. There's various techniques. Some say go cut it right below the ground level, or what. We cut it right as close to the ground as we can without getting a lot of dirt. You just go in there and you cut it right at ground level, and you just walk along. And if it's in some of our older patches, they've kind of grown out of the rows, and so they're a little. It's kind of fun. You're out there hunting for asparagus, and it's and it gets, you can get some pretty large things, and it's just a lot of fun. You go out there and you harvest it, and every day you see how much you have, and say, oh boy, Steve's going to be happy today. I've got 10 pounds for him, or whatever.
Yeah, it's pretty sad when your happiness is determined by whether or not you get asparagus. But in the spring, literally, literally, I'm not kidding, and you know this. We eat it every single day because it's a short season. What's the season? Usually 6-7 weeks, maybe. 6 to 8 weeks. It depends on the weather, because if it turns and gets really hot, like it oftentimes does in Iowa, it'll start sprouting, and you get a huge amount in a short week, and so it uses up most of its energy. And I believe, I haven't seen this in actual studies, but there's like a total amount of biomass that these things are going to produce that year with the rain and everything else. And so sometimes it gets spread out over a cooler spring, and you get it all at one time. And so it could be a shorter season, or it could be a longer season. Or a shorter, depending on how hot it is, basically. And if it starts drying up, it starts cutting back. It throttles back then. Yeah. So I think it's a terrific investment as far as time. If you're in a spot where you can do that, because if you love asparagus, which I do love asparagus, it's so much less expensive to grow it yourself.
I don't know about that. Actually, they say maybe
it's less expensive to buy it from somebody you know.
Yeah, and it's right at your table. It's clean, and why would you grow it? No, I am a firm believer in everybody being self-sufficient. And for a family, I was looking at the chart last night because I said I don't know how much it's about 50 feet to 100 feet for a family, and I think the 100 feet would probably include storing. You can freeze it. I never do that, but for people who freeze things or can it or whatever, then you'd have enough for that purpose.
So you need basically a 50 to 100 foot length of
row, yeah, one row, yeah.
and that's a family of 4 probably, I would think.
Yeah, I think that's actually quite a bit of asparagus. And then of course you could also, if you had a longer row or the longest row, you could do the fall harvest where you maybe save a third of it for a small fall little bunch to eat.
So what's your favorite way to prepare asparagus?
I hand it to my brother or my wife, and they do these wonderful, incredible things with it. And I'm pretty much the manager.
I like that. That's efficiency in action.
My wife is here, and she's picking up new recipes. And
what does she like to do?
I think was it olive oil and kind of broil it a little bit is one that I like that she does. And then of course there's just in the beginning of the season it's steamed or anything real simple because you're starved at that point. And so at the end of the season it's kind of like and a lot of times we have coals that are just going to go in the compost pile, so we can eat these or not, so it's not going to go on forever. So we eat a lot of asparagus almost as much as you do.
I think that asparagus is, to me anyway, it's the perfect plant to actually learn how important it is to enjoy the season and just go with that and move on to whatever is coming up next, because it is that 6 to 8 weeks, and you appreciate, or at least I know that we do, appreciate so much having that plant in our lives for that 6 to 8 weeks. And after that, it's kind of like an immediate letdown, a little bit of depression setting in, right? Yeah. But that denial, right? Exactly. That's very good. What else? No, we're not going to get that carried away. But and then we have to wait for the next thing. But it's exciting, and I think that it gives us an appreciation, really, for understanding what nature can do in our particular area where we're from, as opposed to going to the store in December and buying asparagus that was cultivated in some warm or tropical
Argentina or something.
Right, some tropical climate that has a carbon footprint that's gigantic, and that really is not. It's not even, in a sense, it's not even listening to your body if you're living here, because it's not what nature would provide for you on a regular basis.
Yeah, and of course all the a lot of traditional systems, Ayurveda, all these Chinese medicine, basically all of them, asparagus is always up at the very top, as far as health benefits and things that it's just incredible. And one of the really neat things about selling asparagus, other than eating it too and having more than I can eat, is you bring it to people who really appreciate asparagus, and you bring these like big bundles of 10 pounds of it or whatever, and it just looks incredible. And then you just watch the eyes as they open it up and look at it, and then certain people will actually say, well, when will the next one be coming? Yeah. And
thank you, Michael. It's been a pleasure. You've been listening to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. We come to you every first Tuesday live at Green Building Supply. We want to thank Green Building Supply, Everybody's Whole Foods, and of course Jason Strong from Fairfield Media Center for all of his work in getting this broadcast up. And we're going to continue with the show, but if you're listening to the broadcast, stay tuned, because there's more coming on Great Taste. So, Michael, this was really helpful, and I did learn a lot. Matter of fact, the most important thing I've learned so far is that I want to continue to allow you to grow asparagus for me.
Thank you. I certainly enjoy it.
It's just so much easier. So now we're going to get into the more, for some of us anyway, even the more interesting part, which is...
Yeah, this is the best part. I could just watch. Huh?
Well, kind of, yeah. Yeah, so we're going to talk about eating. So one of the things that is important about asparagus is that asparagus comes in basically 3 different sizes. You're going to see pencil thin asparagus. You're going to see medium size, which, if you can see this little tray that's in the front here, those are kind of like medium. And then there's going to be, your big guys, like this, okay?
That's the real asparagus. That's real stuff there.
Some people, they have different preferences. Some people love the pencil thin stuff. Some people like the medium. Some people like the big boys. But the bottom line is it's asparagus and it all tastes great. And if you are part of the French tradition, you will always do what this guy looks like, which is you'll always peel your asparagus. Some people just feel like that the asparagus bottom parts are a little too tough, the skin's a little too tough. I usually don't peel unless I'm making it a particular way or if I've noticed that something's really, really tough. But this is what classical French preparation always has peeled, and this is about as far as you go up to. You certainly don't go up to the head and start peeling the head off. So that's really good. Anyway. The other thing that you have to do before you get to that point is you have to break the asparagus because the bottom part is really woody. So I think Julie left us one here. So we're kind of going to where is that one? That was I don't know what happened to it. There was one that wasn't. Oh, yeah, okay, we can do that. So Michael, maybe you can demonstrate because a lot of people may not know, but it's really simple to prepare asparagus. Very, very easy. But you've got to take it once you get it. And by the way, one of these, Michael, 1 pound of asparagus is the door prize. 1 pound of fresh picked asparagus. So do you want to get that, just get one stalk and break it for, what happened to that stalk, that one? Huh? Oh, okay.
Now here's another thing. If you're picking your own asparagus, like we always try and pick it down so that there's not, see, that's pretty tender.
Yeah, that's pretty tender, but most of us are never going to, unless we're picking our own, we're not going to get it that way. I think most of us are going to be at the store, so we don't have to necessarily break that, but, okay, I don't know what happened to that one.
So this is pretty tender, see, down
that wasn't a good snap, but I wouldn't want to break that one. I like that. Yeah.
There's a little bit of toughness on the bottom, but, yeah, you're right.
You just use 2 hands and you just break it near the bottom. You don't want to waste any of the stalk, so you break it down as far as down as you can. But it finds its natural break point. It's really easy.
Some people actually harvest it by breaking it, but you end up leaving a lot of stalk there on the base. So I usually like to, and then I trim it when I get to the house after it's picked, and so I prefer to do it that way, so you don't have these little sharp stalks sticking up all in there.
Okay, that sounds like a plan, and I think that Michael is exactly right when he was talking about that you want the heads to be tight, because actually it could also indicate older asparagus too if the heads are not real tight. So Julie, would you mind putting these other guys in to roast? And we'll talk about so many different preparations that can be done with asparagus, and it's really so simple to use on a daily basis. And Michael was saying that in the beginning because we're just kind of starved for asparagus, maybe we'll just steam it and put some nice melted butter on it, a little salt and pepper, and be done with it. That's great, right? That's delicious. And a few years ago, I was talking to Patricia Wells, who's a very famous cookbook author. She's lived in France for about 25 years, 30 years now in Paris. And she has a very simple method that she shared with me that I, the first year that she told me about this, I almost every single time I made asparagus, I just made it this way, which is just taking a saucepan, a little smaller size, we don't need anything this big, and you put a little bit of water in it, and a couple of bay leaves, and the asparagus, and a little olive oil, salt and pepper, and you just essentially simmer it in there until it's nice and tender, and you're done. You can add a little bit more olive oil if you want afterwards, but you may not even need it. And that's like so simple and easy. You don't cover it. You keep it uncovered, and you're done. What do you need? You need this olive oil, Julie. Here you are. And the salt and pepper? Sure, of course. We're happy to give that to you. Thank you. So that's one way. And what we're going to do for the show is we've already made asparagus soup. And I will tell you about it in a minute, because I think people who've had it are waiting for me to explain how that is made, and it's really simple. But we're also going to have an asparagus risotto, which we'll probably prepare after the show. So we'll talk a little bit about it before the show is over. And the other method that we're going to use is we're just going to roast the asparagus in a roasting on a baking sheet in the oven at about 425 degrees, and it'll take about somewhere around 15-20 minutes. If you want to really be fast, honestly, you can just broil it, and you can do that in about 4 or 5 minutes. If you're in a hurry, broiled asparagus is fantastic, and it's really totally simple. The first thing you do is you wash the asparagus, and all you have to do is just put it in some water, just sit in there for a couple minutes, and then I do it usually 2 times. It's usually not very, unless it's harvested in an uncareful manner, I guess you'd say.
Also, some areas that are sandy, they might have more grit, but here in Iowa, there's not much grit. So basically, you can just wash it,
Yeah, but if you're getting it from California or something, there may be a lot more grit. So that's why you have to get it washed, and you have to let it soak for a little bit. And then once you do that, pat it all dry, because you're going to put some olive oil on it, and olive oil and water are not going to mix too well that way. So you want to pat it all dry, and then put it in a big pan or on a saucepan, on a baking sheet, and just sprinkle a little olive oil on it, and take either your hands or some tool and mix it all up till it gets nice and coated with olive oil. Then add your salt and pepper at that point, so it sticks nicely to it. And then you can do whatever you need to do in terms of, if you want to put it in the oven. Then at that point, one thing that I like to do is I like to roast it in the oven, or broil it, in the oven for just short of the time when it's going to be finished. And then you can take it out and cut it and use it in all kinds of other preparations. For example, we're going to make risotto by roasting it in the oven, and then we're going to put it into the rice at the end of the cooking process. But the other thing that I like to do is take that roasted asparagus just before it's done, and then bring it back out and add a little bit of Parmigiano to that. And also I like to add a little bit of really grainy mustard to that, but just a little bit, because you don't want to asparagus is it's a subtle taste, and you don't want to, overwhelm it with anything. That's one of the reasons why I don't even use garlic usually when I make asparagus, because it could overwhelm it. Though in the soup we have ramps, which are also a very short season, like really short. Yeah, do you have those?
We go out in the woods and gather them, and they're really nice. I love ramps.
Yeah, they're really good, and I use the whole thing, all the greens and the bottom, for this.
Yeah, we usually in a park, so we just take the tops, and that's still really pretty nice.
Did you just say that you usually find them in a park and say?
Yeah.
So you don't want to be digging holes in the park.
I don't want to tear up their thing. Yeah. Actually, we are starting some of our own around our land there, and they're starting this year. They popped up for the first time, so I think in another year we can start harvesting them on our own place.
Oh, well, we'll be hearing about that, I hope.
Yeah, we can do a ramp festival next time.
That'll be awesome. So the one thing that I want to mention, which is really important, is do not throw these guys away, these bottoms, because they are extremely useful. For example, you can always throw them on the floor and then clean them up. So if you need something to do, they'll provide that opportunity for you. But the other thing that they do is they provide an opportunity to make a broth, because any type of preparation that you're going to make with asparagus that requires liquid, it's enhanced by using asparagus broth as opposed to water by itself, for example. And you can use those bottoms by themselves. I combined them with celery and bay leaves and salt and pepper and carrot, and there may have been a couple of other things in there that I tossed in there to make this. Probably looked in the fridge to see what was hanging around and just threw that in there. I think there were some chard stems, for example. Sometimes when you make chard, you don't want to use the stems, so save them and make a broth with them. Anyway, very important not to waste the bottoms. And you can sometimes I actually get carried away and peel the bottoms before I put them in there and cut them in half, because I feel like there's going to be more flavor. I've never experimented to see if that's really true, but usually that's a lot more work than I want to get into. So
yeah, we usually have big piles of cuttings and everything, so we don't do that.
Yeah, it's way not necessary. Anyway, so you can do that with the bottoms. And the other thing with the asparagus that's really important is that you want to eat it when it's warm or hot. You don't want to eat cold. Honestly, cold asparagus is not too cool. Yeah, raw asparagus, even if you are a raw food person. Sorry, I'm not really into raw asparagus. It's got so much more flavor developed when you cook it, even just a little bit. Just cook it a little bit, and it's really got a lot of. You can give it a lot of love. The other thing that you can do too is when you finish it, and I did this with the soup. Those of you who had it, is lemon zest, because the lemon zest adds that little bit of acid that really just perks up the flavor and makes it kind of zing in your mouth. So that's what lemon zest. And if you have the ability to get Meyer lemons, I would definitely suggest Meyer lemons, because that adds an even more fun element to using the asparagus. So those are really the little hints that I would give you if you're going to use an allium. I like shallots as opposed to onions. I think they have a subtler, more interesting flavor. Or leek is another way to do it. Or ramps, like I used for the soup, because ramps are essentially baby leeks that are wild. And so all those things are really good as far as doing that. So the soup, real simple. All I did was I took the asparagus whole, and I put it into a little bit of water, not even covering. They may have been covered, and I added a little salt. Yeah, to it, a little too much salt, and then just basically simmered it for about 5-6 minutes until it was still a beautiful green. And that's really important, because if you cook it too long, then your soup is going to be gray, and you don't want to serve your friends gray soup. So you have to do that. Now, one thing you can do is you could shock it. I'm not a big shock person because I like to eat it. I think that it's just better to eat it immediately as opposed to letting it sit around. But if you need to, you can put it in an ice bath, and that way it'll keep the color nice and green. But if we don't want to do it the simplest way, it's just cook it for a few minutes in that water, and then take it and put it into your blender and add to that whatever you'd like. Broth would be great. If you have broth, first of all, you can put the cooking liquid if you didn't add too much salt, which some person did. So otherwise, you can add broth to it, which will enrich your soup and make it a lot more flavorful. And then you can add some shallot that you would soften and cook in your pan first. I think that would give it a lot more flavor. Take a little bit of butter or a little bit of olive oil and cook your shallot until it just gets a little bit of color to it. If you want to, you could add some garlic. I used wild ramps, as I said, for this particular soup. And then I added a little bit of Parmigiano and a little bit of butter. Oh, I forgot that. There was a little bit of butter in there. Not much, but a little bit. You don't have to use butter. You can use olive oil. This can be a vegan dish, or it can be a vegetarian dish. It's delicious either way, either vegan or vegetarian. You just leave out you use olive oil instead of butter, and you don't use any Parmigiano. Either way, it's delicious. Salt and pepper, and you're done. I mean, really, that's it. It's so simple and easy. And you can adjust your flavors once you taste it to see what it needs. Finish it off with some lemon zest, a little bit of pepper ground on top. If you want to be really fancy, you can use, white pepper kernels, because it doesn't show the little black specks on your green, but I don't get that fancy. And then drizzle it with a little bit of delicious olive oil, because that'll just enhance the flavor with that little bit of olive oil on top and the lemon zest. It'll be terrific. You could also sprinkle a little bit more Parmigiano on top of it too. And just to be clear, we're talking about Parmigiano Reggiano, not Parmesan cheese like that you could buy from Wisconsin or Argentina or something like that. If you're going to use a cheese on this, I would suggest that a Parmigiano Reggiano. You could also use I think a Conte would be really awesome. On top of that, Pecorino, really good Pecorino would be good, but you have to be really careful because Pecorino, so many really poor quality Pecorino Romano varieties available that you have to be really careful, because most of them are just really too salty and don't have any depth of flavor other than salt. So you want to make sure you get a good one. And while we're talking about that, I give a plug to the cheese shop in Des Moines, because there you can find just about anything that you need to cook as far as using cheese with. So I think that's really about it. It's really for the risotto. We'll do it, but I think again we're probably going to do it. We're gonna end this a little bit early. You don't mind, do you? Nah, we're okay with that. Excellent. So, because I know that everybody's getting hungry, and I want to make that risotto, because I love making risotto for everybody. It's so much fun for me to do that, and I want to show you. How many people have made risotto here? Oh, a few of you. Okay, not too many. It's a comfort dish. It's a comfort dish all year round. And it's most comforting not only to the person who's making it, but to everyone you serve it to, because you are spending just your time with it. And so when you serve it to your guests, they feel it. They really get it. It's a wonderful dish. And the great thing about risotto is that it's perfect for every season of the year, because in the spring, you can make it with fresh peas, with fresh asparagus, and it's green and just gorgeous looking, because of that. You could make a puree like the soup and put that in. We're not going to do that, but you could easily do that, because if we did that, then the people who didn't get any of the soup would be really upset that we used it in the risotto. So we're going to let people enjoy it, the soup. But it's just beautiful. The very first risotto I ever had was at a place in New York called named Da Umberto, and it was in the spring, and it was a fresh pea risotto, and it just has stuck with me for all these years, because it just blew my mind. It was so delicious. But then in the summer, you can start using all kinds of other wonderful vegetables that have come in, and of course, if you want to use fish or chicken or meats, you can always put that in. And then in the fall, like as the tomatoes come in, you can just have the simplest risotto, which is we just add some wonderful fresh tomatoes to it as far as the preparation is concerned. And actually, you can make in the spring. You can just use a little. You don't even have to put any vegetables in. If you have a good stock, you can just sprinkle the top with fresh parsley that you grew in your garden that you've chopped up. And it's absolutely amazing. So it's a terrific dish. And as you get into the fall and the winter, you can make butternut squash risotto. And gosh, this turned into the risotto show instead of the asparagus show. But anyway, I just love. You don't get that probably. That I like it a lot, right?
No, I hardly picked up on it.
Yeah. Okay. So butternut squash risotto is amazing. Beet and gorgonzola and pear. Wow. That's like crazy. Beet, gorgonzola, and pear. That's amazing. A little bit of toasted walnuts in that. You can't eat too much of it because it's really rich, but it's quite extraordinary. And then what I would also suggest is that you experiment with other grains too. So farro is a fantastic grain to substitute for the rice. And again, I would suggest that more for the fall, winter, but you could use it in the spring. But it's a little bit heavier grain than rice. And as far as rice varieties are concerned, I don't know how this happened. But as far as rice varieties are concerned, we're using an arborio rice for the preparation that comes from California. It's an organic arborio, but I don't recommend you use that. Arborio is my least favorite variety for cooking risotto. I would recommend that you look for a really nice quality Carnaroli or a Vialone Nano. There are many other varieties that you can use, but those are the two that are easier to find, and especially Carnaroli. So that's what I would recommend. And the reason is very simple. Once you eat your first helping, you want to go back and have more, right? And with arborio generally, and with maybe some other varieties I'm not familiar with, so it may or may not be true, but definitely with arborio, that rice, which should be served al dente, so like pasta, it has a little bit of texture to the tooth when you bite into it. By the time it's sat around and you're ready for that second helping, it's kind of mushy. And so Carnaroli won't do that, and Vialone Nano won't do that either. So they're terrific in that way. Anyway, look up some recipes for risotto and learn how to do it. It's awesome. It's really fun, and it's such a simple process. So we're going to get into that in just a couple minutes. Would you like to add anything about asparagus?
The one thing I guess is when you buy it or you pick it, how to keep it fresh.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'd kind of forgotten about that one. But I've found that actually if you pick a spear of asparagus and you put it in water and keep it at room temperature, it will keep growing. They'll grow like an inch or so overnight. And so I've found that if you want to not have it continue growing, then spread, the best way to keep it is to cut it all off so that's even on the bottom, and then you put it in a shallow pan, like an inch or two of water in there, and stick it in the fridge or in a cool place so it won't grow quite as fast. But it'll be, when you eat it, then it'll just be like you just picked it off out of the asparagus patch and popped it in your mouth. So that's an important part.
Well, I hope you've inspired some people to actually start their own patch of asparagus.
Yeah. It'd be crazy not to, really.
And if not, at least go out and get some. Farmers market, probably people can find it at the farmers market. I would think very soon if it's not available yet.
It's starting to pop up. Yeah.
So enjoy that, and I wish you lots of great tastes when it comes to asparagus in the spring. And thank you so much for visiting with us, Michael.
It's my pleasure. It's been a lot of fun.
You've been listening to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. I'm Steve Boss, your host every week, Wednesdays and Fridays, for 60 minutes of delicious radio. And you can tune in to this show on live stream from Fairfield Media Center, or you can check their YouTube channel, right? Fairfield Media Center has a YouTube channel, and you can find our past episodes on the YouTube channel. And every first Tuesday of the month, we'll be here at Green Building Supply live for another Great Taste. June the 7th is the next one with Rosie Witherspoon, and tools to make your kitchen life easier. And also Will Love and his friends doing some raw food specialties, right? Yeah, okay, good. Thumbs up. Excellent. I love that. Okay, so thanks again for joining us, and enjoy your time in the kitchen, because to me, there's nothing better. The only thing better than enjoying your time in the kitchen is enjoying your time with everyone you get to eat with after you're finished preparing your stuff in the kitchen. Thank you.
Great taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.